We're going to start today with the man himself, the poet, Francis, reading what we looked at last week, the love song of John Kerry. After he does, I want to say a few more things about the love song. We were rather brief in the treatment, but here is his own reading of it. When was this? Anyone know when this was recorded?
60s? No, it would have been done after Francis came back to India, I suppose, early 70s. And it's a bit scratchy, but...
And I'll put up the poem on the screen as he reads it, so you can read it here.
Where this is part of the love song to John?
This is the whole thing.
Okay.
His reading of the whole thing. I don't know, what is it, 10 minutes or something like that?
No, it's more like 16, 20.
Oh, that one, okay.
So, okay,
So this is the second book
Back in
Steve got.
Australia, the northeast of the West, John Kerry continued the exile he had begun so and so many millions of lives ago through his own act of waking up and wanting to know exactly who he was. A musical question which turned out to be a fugal proposition of infinite possible development. Sun beat and rain beat, veil upon veil, day veil of brightness, night veil of dark. Face veils and taunt veils, gossamer spun, crowded close and thickly. Sail veils and flag veil hoisted over veil of sea, veil voyage and returning. Rain veil of weeping in a place he hoped where none knew of ships and journeying and the far shadowing of his glance. Baba, thou beloved. Nursing his wound, never healing, but widening because the spearhead remained in it, widening and love festering, sloughing off flesh veil, widening cleanly in the spearhead of bliss, entering more deeply into the flesh veils, ever more hungrily and healingly. As the sun into the earth when the farmer sets his plough, more deeply into the sour subsoil where no sun has been before. Each day of day drag or day flight curtained within the three curtains of sleep veil and dream veil and wake veil, sleep the forgetter and dream the distortioner and wakefulness, the cruel concretizer who sets the dreams in solid forms, the painter whose brush strokes are the bones and whose colour is the teeming flesh squeezed out of tubes of nerves. Nursing the wound, gazing with admiration on the face of the lovely spearman, he was saying to himself, small wonder and great wonder, things are as they are, and this business of everything and nothing. This business of being nothing and somebody. Nobody feeling he is something. Something in your hand, Baba, or else nothing before your feet. Patience, fool, he was telling himself. Yap of nothing about something which turns out to be nothing. Yap now of piddle-pool paddling instead of sitting quiet by the crystal stream, gold flecked off his love. To advantage when you sit still. You don't feel the kick in the bones so much, and you give him a chance to do something. Baba, thou beloved, you, Baba. Stop wanting when you are lying down to raise yourself onto your knees, and stop wanting to lie down and cover your head with a blanket when you are standing up. Stop wanting a job with dry land and with lovely rivers. Leave it to him. He knows the time of seed time and growth time and fruit time, both in space time and continent time. Baba, thou son of the gold of the spear in its widening and healing. Turn in yourself, John, bring back your eyes, fond man, from restless visioning. What is it to you that an eye is furtive, a lip derisive, that speech is ruined, and no eye's lightning indicts the pages of books in lovely verse? Become in your seeing blind, in your hearing deaf, or ever the lovely tide of spring will find you, lip clinging to a clod of earth, and your eyes stretched in an empty sky. Only a deep cloud of a man can rain rains over parched earth. My gods are diminishing. Since you are a jealous god, one lovely in vanity of a lone sultaness, let the mill of you grind this to flour for the hungry of you, or let their hunger grow into a crop of hunger, so that they will the more seek you and cast this as dust to the wind. Or when the grinding is done, either to flour or dust, give me a word, a lovely singing word in my mouth, some honey word, some wine word to utter in singing. Not for many, but for thou in my ear to delight in, so that my ear may aid mine eyes to fix themselves only on your dear form. A singingness of a word, the lovely word of your name, O beloved one, you. Become unstuck, God, in your entrancement in this which is called me, so that your own love for yourself may be released in a clear stream. Why do you allow yourself to fall into error, attaching yourself to everything you see through these eyes? You are the ever-free, blissful one. I am the veil between yourself and me. Tear this veil which is between us, but if you cannot, ask Baba to do it for you. Oh, the nothingness of the nothing, which is the things of thingness contained in the everything. Nothing am I, and everything art thou, my beloved, lovely and loveliness itself. Oh, what a box of tricks you are, Krishna Baba. Oh, but you are the compassionate one himself, Buddha Baba. The most shepherd of the flocks of the world, Jesus Baba. The long shadowing spear and the singing bow one, Ram Achilles Baba. But I would like to be the most least of a nothing of your servant, and dither about cleaning shoes and carrying water in the ambrosial dawn hours. By God, I would, Baba. It gets a bit irksome waiting for your word, for you to say something. And this blasted murk of a black pitch of a night, which is not a dark night, but just as said, a black bitch of a night. Oh, the nothingness of the nothing, which is the things of thingness in everything. Nothing am I, but everything art thou, my beloved, lovely and loveliness itself. You, the Lord and dear child of yourself, says Bambino Baba. But a little love injected into us could not altogether be frowned upon as miracle making, even though it would be a miracle if the injection took. But it is no good talking to you, Baba. You are just too much love. Whatever we say, you just smile with your smile of divine kindness, as much as to say, oh, these children are mine, myself. Why did I ever wake up and start singing? This singing of your smile, stretching out and supporting the nothingness of us of the nothing. And, oh, the dawn song of his mouth. I only hope I am still around. It's no good talking to one who is the saying of the say which one says, because he doesn't listen, because he knows exactly what he is going to say. Tired am I of myself, for the wide expanse of the sky of your bosom I cry. Awaken my heart that I may love you with service, or else be dust before your feet. Anything but this, not even nothing, nor a place in your everything. Something, oh my child and my father. The stars weep, and you have compassion on them in their dew to the grass and the wheat fields. The sun sinks in his shame, and you cover him with hiding night. But my tears laugh at me, and my shame is naked before me. The prayers of the ant and the flame-loving moth are you answering, and the heavy earth turning are you guiding with infinite care. A song in your praise, or a mute adoration, is not much of an asking. And there will come the time of your lovely speaking and your leaving, and my going and returning and waiting and emptiness and unlovely earth under my feet and wide, wide sky, somewhere you will be. And the mother will be answering her child, and the loved one her lover, with moon and star glint of love eyes, Baba, Baba, God, Son of earth and rains of all growing. Not only can I not sing of you, my beloved, but I have no place in your work. A lame cur around the streets and back doors of houses am I, who was once a cattle dog whose teeth were respected. Dog I would be, but at your heels, Baba, to trot in your dust, and at campfire at night lie a little way off watching your every move, and when you lay down, myself to follow you again in dreams. But I remember your am I not enough to upper side, both of the time when the people praised him and when they voided their filth on him. I remember your utter kindness and the hem of your dress in my hand and your saying, I am always with you, and your own always rejection. The well-set mills of God grind the wheat small, and you are the king and the king's son on earth who pays for us all. But no, it is not any that reject me. Myself rejects me that I may become acceptable to him. And just as dog I had to be on my way up to man, so dog I must become on my way back to myself. Baba, thou sower and reaper and grinder, thou sifter and again ear grower in each speck of flour. Surely you are in your kindness tying up my tongue with the same cords you are cutting away from my heart. You are the great undoer, so that what shall be done shall be done. The remover who brings forward, the stupefier who makes intelligent. The wind that levels the young wheat, that the stalks may grow strong in the sun, while you, during the days of its growing, attend other else, and wet with your eyes the sigh of its reaping, thou lovely one, thou faithless one of all faith. Thou stone cutter and gem cutter, thou potter and breaker of pots, thou upturner and returner, thou upheaver and leveler, thou bender of what is straight, and thou straightener of the bent, thou Baba, thou lovely woman and glory, man and child, thou moon and night, thou starlight, thou dawn swept of stars, thou morning of sun, thou lone doer, thou adorable and adored, thou us, thou only alone self. Thus was John Kerry complaining and praising. For complaint is praise, inasmuch as complaint is attachment. And praise is complaint because praise is separation. And he was recognizing that this was the beginning of those subtractions, the sum total of which would be a subtraction of him from himself. When the 5 sheets are subtracted, Atman alone remains. Shivoham, Shivoham, I am existence, knowledge, bliss. Cease, cease, swallow thy breath every moment.
Okay. You guys heard that before? Well, that's Francis's love song. And I wanted to recapitulate just some of the themes. We were very brief in discussing about it last time. So just a few things. One is, do you know what Shivoham means?
Doesn't it mean I am existence, knowledge, bliss?
And Shiva. And Shiva.
Shiva.
You know, Shiva is really big in this poem. Shiva comes in big in Stay With God. He seems to have had a strong feeling for him. But then I am that's such an Anand. I think.
Is it Shiva Aham?
I think so.
Pushed together?
I think so. Maybe this is something that Shaivites say, Shivoham, Shivoham. It sounds like it. I don't happen to know.
I think when 2 vowels in Sanskrit get
They
put
you
together,
get a
they come together.
you have syncopation, kind of assimilation. And I think swallow thy breath every moment. I think this is a Rumi quote. That's going to come up again in book 4. And the 5 sheaths, those are going to be named actually in book 3, which is the next book here. Those are, in Vedanta, there are 5 sheaths, concentric circles, koshas they're called, around Atman, which is the soul. And so the 5 sheaths would comprise the false self. So when the 5 sheaths, when the false self is annihilated, Atman alone remains. That's a Vedantic statement. Now, in reading the first book, a theme that came up, I'm just reminding about the heroic theme here. The heroic theme came up big time in book 1, particularly with the Odyssey and the Iliad, and the plainsmen are characterized as like the heroes of the Iliad or the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and those struggles are construed as the greater war. We read a stanza from book 5 in the first day or second day about there's the greater war and the lesser war. And the greater war is the war against your own lower self. So this is a huge theme throughout Stay With God, the war, the true war. And in this love song, he does a very creative inversion of it, where he becomes the one who's being stabbed by the spearman. You might say the whole love song is his song as he's being stabbed to death by the spearman, who he loves for doing it. And this is, a characteristic of love songs, where in a love song, so often you represent yourself as the loser, as the one without worth. The beloved is all worth, all beauty, all brightness, and I have completely lacked many things, and the beloved doesn't love me. So I'm a complete loser in the world. This is something we would never say publicly, except rare times. It's always embarrassing to other people when you do. But in love songs, there's a kind of a license to give expression to these feelings that I dare say most of us have at one time or another, but wouldn't say. It's part of the convention of a love song. Similarly, a hero wouldn't boast, I'm going to get up on the battlefield against you and have my ass kicked. He wouldn't say that. But here he is, he's getting killed. He's losing the battle against his divine beloved. So that's the frame for this entire love song. He takes a theme from earlier on. I also mentioned, and I wanted to recall, that the theme of the everything and the nothing was emphasized by Baba himself, who gave a message on precisely that to start the book. Remember that? Some of you read a very great message Baba gave, all about the everything and the nothing. And it always strikes me that the theme of the everything and the nothing is about this unpromising theme for a love song I could ever imagine. If you wanted to sort of, you're out in the moonlight and, darling, there's something I've always wanted to say to you. It's about the everything and the nothing. It's sort of, you're not going to go anywhere with that, are you? But Francis actually successfully transforms this. He really brings out the love paradox in it, which is this. Baba's Advaita, Advaita is non-dualism. His philosophy is that God exists and creation is not. You are everything art thou and nothing am I, O my beloved, right? But why the hell am I still here then, right? And that, in a way, is our whole problem. I mean, if God alone exists, why is this room here? Why am I here? Why are all you here? Where's God? But in the lover's context, I mean, I don't know, I can really relate to this. There is the thing of wanting to annihilate yourself before the one who you love, but constantly feeling that you're still there. I can really imagine when you're in Baba's presence, this was really a strong feeling. When I was around Erich, I always felt like this. I always wanted to somehow say something that was clever or that contributed to the discussion or that made him notice me. And I felt like the biggest oaf that was ever born, and so I just shut up the whole time. It was actually a good thing because what he was saying was much better than anything I would have said. But I can you want to, Baba's there and you want to, contribute something. You want to be of use. You want to have value in his darbar. And yet you're just constantly feeling you're everything and nothing. So that's what Francis is actually developing. Is he's saying, give me something to do or get rid of me. Don't leave me in this dilemma of not even nothing, right? That's a constant theme in his love song. It's quite a brilliant use of this, don't you think so? I really think it's most creative poetic accomplishment to turn this into a real love theme. So he says that right at the start. He says, something in your hand, Baba, or else nothing before your feet. And I would say that's the central theme of this love song. And he keeps exploring that in different ways. Here are some other places, and he brings it up very movingly. Of course, we all heard him read this just a second again. It says, he was talking about, what's the use in saying anything to you, Baba? Because you already know it and you already are it. It's just a waste of my time to try to talk to you. So there's no use talking to one who is the saying of the say which one says, because he doesn't listen, because he knows exactly what he's going to say. Tired and tired am I of myself. Haven't you felt that sometimes? Boy, I sure have. This is the lover's thing. For the wife, awaken in my heart that I may love you with service. And give me some real service to do, or else be dust before your feet. Anything but this, not even nothing, nor a place in your everything. Something, O my child and my father. That's a very moving expression of this feeling, I think. This is a beautiful stanza. The stars weep, and you have compassion on them, and they're due to the grass. These are kind of standard poetic metaphors of the lover's response to God. The dawnlight breaks against my grief of stubborn days. All the same imagery is in that poem is in the stanza. In the wheat fields, the sun sinks in his shame, and you cover him with hiding night. But my tears laugh at me compared with the dew to the grass, which gets nice reflections of sunlight. My tears laugh at me. My shame is naked before me.
What do those wheat fields do?
I don't know.
Due to the grass and the wheat field.
Grass and the
There's
wheat
no
field.
punctuation after grass.
When Francis read it, he misread it, actually. He didn't realize the sentence ran on. I imagine it's just Australian. Do you have wheat here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here,
It's right to be an Australiano.
yeah, there's a lot of it in State of God. So here you have it again, the same dichotomy. A song in your praise or a mute adoration is not much of an asking. One or the other. Give me one or give me the other. Don't leave me in this limbo where I'm not even nothing. I'm not even nothing, but I'm not something. And this is a kind of a very introspective stanza, the most introspective stanza of the whole love song. And he seems to be talking about his own death and rebirth, it sounds like. And there will come a time of your lovely speaking and your leaving. This is when they were all waiting for Baba to break the silence, right? He seems to be referring explicitly to that. Baba will speak and then he'll drop his body sooner or later. Francis knew that would happen. And my going, that's my own death, and returning, and waiting, and emptiness, and unlovely earth under my feet, and wide, wide sky, somewhere you will be. It's like even after this lifetime of being with Baba, well, you'll break your silence, and you'll pass away, and I'll pass away, and I'll be reborn and back in this empty world once again. It's kind of a tragic picture there. Now it looks like he's even talking about his own mother. It sounds like him. And the mother will be answering her child. It sounds like Francis to me. And the loved one, her lover with moon and star glint of love eyes. Baba, Baba, God, son of earth and rains of all growing. So these are some poetic explorations of this nothing and everything theme. I just wanted to...
There's the whole next stanza about the dog, and
Yeah.
it's just so beautifully written. And
Yeah.
Carolyn and I happened to see the new movie out, A Dog's Purpose, that's just come out from
Yeah.
the States. And it's just, it's all taken from the viewpoint of the dog, and he comes back in different dog forms, continuing to try to find the purpose of being a dog. And this whole thing is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And in the very end, the dog realizes. But it's just, so does Francis refer to dogs anywhere else, or is this something?
We heard one barking in the middle of that recording.
I love
I
that.
thought I barked a little bit too soon.
That's right.
Actually, I think it came out
He wasn't keen on dogs? Okay.
Well, in my experience. Yeah, but
This isn't actually a dog, but it's the same kind of theme. I would like to be the most least of a nothing of your servant, and dither around cleaning shoes and carrying. Yeah, actually, it does. No, it doesn't mention dog here. Ambrosial dawn hours. This desire just to be have a menial,
Oh, yeah, that
negligible
last
part.
line there.
Black pitch of the night.
Yeah, we have a black pitch of a night. Yeah. You can't trust what Francis says. This blasted murk of a black pitch of a night, which is not a black dark night, but as said, a black pitch of a night. I beg your pardon, it was not as said. You rewrote it. Now another theme that's very significant in the love song and the entirety of State of God is the word, which he uses in different ways. Now these were, in fact, right in the second to last stanza, it comes up in a big way. And Baba, of course, they were expecting Baba to break his silence, so he keeps referring to it. But in the love song, he uses it in two ways. At the very last stanza, he does that meditation on praise and complaint, right? Where he says, complaint is really praise, because complaint is attachment. Whereas praise is complaint, because praise is separation. It's actually a very penetrating comment about the love song genre. Because the love song genre, I would say, its basic modality is praise and complaint. That's what it's all about, in various ways. You either praise, in the classic, now I know there are these kind of cynical love songs where I never loved you anyway, and I'd like to hope you fall off a cliff, or that sort of thing. But, real love songs. But where you praise the beauty of the beloved and then complain about your own rejection and the beloved's failure to give love. That's basically, so it keeps alternating between those two. And he's saying that each is really the other in that modality. When you're praising the beloved, and this concludes on high praise, those are exalted paragraph stanzas at the end, like gem cutter and stone cutter, all that stuff. And there's not a word about himself in those stanzas. Why is there complaint there? What's his point? If I'm saying,
He complains throughout the whole thing.
yeah, and why
Because
was
he's still there?
Because he's still
in the
there.
body,
Yeah,
which doesn't mean anything.
yeah. Thou stone cutter and gem cutter, thou potter and breaker of pots, thou upturner and returner. In fact, we could sort of add, O Parvardigar, the preserver and protector of all, you are without. It's just you. I'm not there at all. But hey, who's saying the prayer, right? Who's saying thou stone cutter? There's what's not stated is I am separate from you, which is inherently a complaint. That's a deep observation, is it not? And when you're complaining all the time, why is that praise?
Because you're at least thinking of him.
That's
Even if
right.
It's negative.
If, oh, why won't you give your love to me? Well, that implies that you have love and are supremely beautiful and lovable. Otherwise, I wouldn't be complaining. If you're like an ugly hag, like with leprosy and, bad breath and utterly repulsive person, I wouldn't be complaining that you don't give your love to me. I only do it because you're the, epitome of all that's beautiful and good and wonderful, right? So a complaint contains praise within it. So the whole love song is, it would be great to go through the whole thing slowly, but it would take more time than we have, is modulating between praise and complaint. In fact, there are 3 points. He comes to big complaint twice, and then he corrects himself. He says, no, don't complain, you jerk.
Well, like just before, but no, it is not any that reject me, myself rejects me.
That's right. He corrects himself there. It's not anyone else. You're not rejecting me. I'm rejecting myself. And at the very beginning of the whole thing, when he starts complaining, in fact, the very first note is a complaint note, where he says, this being of being nothing and somebody. You see the problem again?
Yeah.
I'm nothing, but I'm still somebody. For heaven's sakes, if I'm nothing, make me nothing. Nobody feeling he is something. Something in your hand, but nothing to your feet. So it starts with a complaint. That's the first note, right? And the final note of his love song is high praise. It goes from complaint to praise. But immediately, patience, fool, he was telling himself. He starts to correct himself. Don't complain. Be patient. It's nobody's fault but your own. Stop wanting this and stop wanting that. And very gradually, imperceptibly, this self-chiding turns into complaining against Baba again. And it's very fun to watch how he does it. He says, oh, and by the way, this is where the word comes up again. The complaint takes the form of, give me the word. And this is actually a classic request to the Guru, give me a mantra. But he's a poet, right? So give me the word that is the wellspring of all poetry. So in a sense, this is very much a poet's love song. And this is where we really see it. Let the mill of you grind this to flour. Notice this is in italics. To me, what that looks like is this writing. Do you think so? Seems like it. In other words, turn this into flour to feed others with. All right, Baba, you told me to write Stay with God. I'm writing it. Turn it into something that can be feed others, or turn it into dust to be thrown away so that they can seek in some real way. You see, the same thing, the same dichotomy. Either make me something of worth or get rid of me. The same dichotomy is there, right? You see that? So, let the mill of you turn this to flour for the hungry of you, so it turns into bread, right? Or let their hunger grow into a crop of hunger, so that they will the more seek you and cast this as dust to the wind. Give me make me useful to others, or else get rid of me completely, so that they can find something better. Or when the grinding is done, either to flour or dust. This is like something useful in your service, that's flour, or dust is nothing. Give me a word, a lovely singing word in my mouth, some honey word. You notice he later is talking about when you're going to break your silence in this black ditch of the night. That's another permutation of this word theme. But now it's the word given to him as the poet. Some wine word to utter in singing. Not for many, but for thou in my ear to delight in, so that my ear may aid mine eyes to fix themselves only on your dear form. What is he talking about?
Oh, the 80 eyes.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like where so the senses combine.
Yes. Give me a word utterance singing, so that in the course of creating this utterance, it's not for anybody else. It's for you. But it's for you in me to focus me on you more. It's sort of to increase my love for you. It's like, help me to love you more and more and more and more and still more. That's how I read it anyway. Does that seem right? So it's this act of his composing, singing, is to increase his attention and love for Baba. That's his purpose, not for anybody else. And now, this I find to be in the love song genre, we could go into a big history of this, but in India, Advaita arose as the leading school of Vedanta, and Advaita has it that I am God, Atman is Brahman. But a reaction to this set in, and part of the motivation was because who wanted to have a dualism, who wanted me not to be God, because they wanted to be able to love God, right? And if I am God, how do I love God? It's kind of a paradox. What do I do? Look in the mirror. Oh, you are so beautiful. Something repulsive about loving yourself. So there actually was a rejection of Advaita by a lot of Vedantas. Ramanujan is the most famous guy. And it was so that there would be scope for love, right? So that's a fundamental paradox if you believe the Advaita version, which Baba's an Advaitin, I would say. So Francis is suddenly going to start talking to God, and the surprise is that it turns out in this stanza not to be Baba, it's somebody else. So become unstuck, God, so now he's telling you, God, don't get so caught in this ignorance. Wake up, in this entrancement, in this which is called me, so that your own love for yourself may be loved, may be released in a clear stream. Why do you allow yourself to fall into error, attaching yourself to everything you see through these eyes? You are giving a lecture to God, a pep talk. You are the ever free, blissful one. I am the veil between yourself and you. This is a direct reference to a couplet of Hafiz, and I wish I had it, but Baba would quote this couplet all the time. Tear this veil which is between us, but if you cannot, ask Baba to do it for you. But suddenly we find out he stopped talking to Baba. So this is a play within the paradox of this Advaita situation, where I'm actually really God, but then I'm not even God. I'm a veil. I'm nothing, right? It's a.
You said there, just there, that yourself and me, when you said that.
Yes, that's right.
I
Yes, he
am the
misread
veil
it.
between yourself and me.
Yeah, whereas it's yourself and you, actually, is what it should be. Yeah, Francis had about 3 or 4 misreadings, I noticed.
Well, but are they misspellings up there?
What's that?
Was he misreading or are they misspellings? Are they typos?
I assume it's between yourself and you. Does anyone have the book there?
I do.
I think it would be yourself and you.
So,
I think that's the point. 60?
It's not like he exists.
is that
Yeah, I'm not even there. I'm not in the picture at all. It's like, here is again the something and the nothing. Get rid of this phony something. Turn me into nothing so that you can really love yourself.
Yes, the book says yourself and you.
Yeah, no, that's right. That would be great. Okay, those were the little things I wanted to just point out since we're doing a quick pass through the love song. Anyone want to say anything else about the love song of John Kerry?
It's really enjoyable hearing Francis. Stupid, isn't it?
Yes.
With that dog in the background, maybe it was recorded in Meherabad, so it could have been earlier.
Oh,
Do you have any idea?
that could be.
Yeah, well, that's a hint. I mean, he did read it here.
Yeah,
Maybe there's more recording.
particularly around here.
He did.
Yeah, but that recording could have been there
But more likely to be Meherabad, yeah.
with a dog.
He stayed at Meherabad, right, when he
Yeah.
went to
Yeah,
visit
he did, yeah.
in the 70s and stuff.
Yes, he got his own room.
But he would go back there and stay in his old room.
Yeah. So this whole book, in the larger scheme of it, is the most personal moment, and it's the personal aspect of Baba that it means to bring up. Because Baba's theme to his lovers was love me, more than anything else. He wanted his lovers to love him. So if you're going to show him who he is, what better way than within the framework of a love song? So this is the moment in the entire poem for that, in the entire state of God for that. Yesterday we were talking a little bit about the Sagun and the Nirgun. I don't know if you remember Sagun and Nirgun. Sagun and Nirgun God, or Paramatma, is God without attributes. And Sagun Brahman, or Sagun God, is God with attributes. The supreme personification of the Sagun aspect is the Divine Beloved, or the Avatar, the perfect master, your master. That's Sagun, God exhibiting attributes all over the place. So this is the supremely Sagun moment within Stay with God. And the next book is going to go completely to the opposite. It's going to go Nirgun. Or I won't even say Nirgun, but impersonal. The universal, let's say that. That will be book 3. Okay, so I remember this is this, so we have 24 stanzas here and 6-line stanzas. And to my ear, we were just reading yesterday where Muhammad said that God loves odd numbers, right? 6 is, at least as Francis uses it here, an incomplete number. It's like the 6th plane is an incomplete plane. So the first book has 7-line stanzas, which has it's like a balanced even number plus one more. Gives it a sort of a fullness or anyway, it feels to me like that. And the last book is 14-line stanzas. Book 4 is going to have 5-line stanzas, and book 4 is about the perfect master, of whom there are 5. But this has been in these. It's a book about restlessness and dissatisfaction and incompletion and longing. That's the theme here. And we had 24 stanzas. And in section 6 of the first book, there are also 24 stanzas. And that's the section where John Carey is introduced. I simply can't believe that these are coincidences when there's so much attention to formal symmetries in the whole book, everywhere evident. So now when we come to book 3, to return to the context in which Baba gave the order to Francis to write State of God. It was, of course, in November of 1955. We were talking about sometimes showing that film that Bob Frederick made on the 1955 Sahavas. So maybe sometime or other you guys could all see it. There's a nice film on that. And it was not a darshan, it was a Sahavas into 4 language groups, 250 each, people in each group. And it was really an intimacy of exchange between lover and beloved. That's how Baba wanted it to be. He gave messages saying that. I want you to feel at home with me. I don't want to have lots of learned discourses, etc., etc., etc. But at exactly the same month, God Speaks was published, which is completely the opposite, right? So it seems like at this historical moment in Baba's life, you got those two opposites, the personal and the impersonal, manifested in these ways. So book 3 is about God Speaks, actually, which was published the very same month that Francis, published, was released. I imagine he probably got his copy there at the Meherabad Sahavas. At the very same month that he got the order to write the book. So this is the section of Stay with God that is most directly related to God Speaks. And the title of the third book is, in fact, God's Speaking, in case you didn't get the point, right? And what it is a... let me just say, too, that Francis did an impressive job of getting to know God Speaks very well in a very short period of time, because he was writing the book within a year or so. Again, there wasn't really anybody for him to go to. He couldn't Skype Erich and say, "Hey, Erich, I don't really get your section on the 10 states of God. Could you explain it to me?" Well, the Skype wasn't really working back in those days. And who would he go to? Robert, Bill LePage, to explain God Speaks to him? There wasn't anybody. He would have been the resident expert. So he really had to come to terms with it himself. So it's quite impressive in that way. I find it to be so. But what this retells, it's very much a work of poetry. It's based on a heavily philosophical work, but it's a poetic vivification of God Speaks. And it's a retelling of the divine theme. Now, here's let me see. Oops, I've got to switch. Just 1 second.
Was Francis a student or well-versed in mathematics, numbers? Did he have any interest in that?
I've never heard that he was. Did any of you know anything about that?
Well, by music.
Through music?
He understood Bach's
Yeah.
interesting
When he
ways.
was 15, so I don't imagine he had much formal.
Not formal.
No. was more later.
He was a smart guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of he had taught himself, from the greatest artists, and a lot of them do have a formal symmetries and a certain math in their works. Music always does, necessarily. And Bach was particularly so. And Dante, there's a lot of it there. The number of cantos and all that kind of thing, which apparently Francis knew well since he...
He'd have read books on it.
What's that?
He'd have read books on it.
Yes, yeah.
The way he was trying to explain things, John, I don't remember him using that sort of imagery, which other people who are fascinated by numbers and things do.
I do remember him talking about Bach's mathematical.
Yeah, no, in relation to...
Oh, really? Bach's mathematical side? Yeah.
No, I meant other things that didn't seem to come up much.
I've heard that in some of Bach's compositions, he would be conscious of the number of measures in his composition to such an extent that a certain measure would correspond to the golden mean, and something significant would happen at that point in the composition. So he was quite a numerologist, Bach was. I can't imagine how he kept all these things going. To write a fugue at all seems impossible. Yeah. But Francis is, in this section, using in my opinion, okay, we mentioned about genre, right? The first book is clearly epic. I would call the whole work epic, frankly. A modern epic, not a classical, ancient epic. The second book is a love song, right? It's using the conventions of the love song. The third one, more than anything else, is a musical form called theme and variation. We're going to play a little 5 minutes of a Mozart composition, which shows it real clearly. You can imagine what it would be. It takes a theme and goes through it various times, varying on it in various ways. And this is the theme. It's the divine theme, Baba called it, which is the journey of the soul. This is Rano's chart. And actually, this Francis wouldn't have had access to this because this didn't get incorporated into God Speaks until the second edition. But he would have known the divine theme. So the story of the divine theme, of course, it has 5 stages in the story. There's creation, originating in the whim of God to know himself. 2, the evolution of consciousness through the 7 kingdoms. 3, reincarnation in human form for 84 lakhs cerebrus. Lakh is 100,000. It's 8,400,000. Involution through the planes of the subtle and mental spheres and the realization of God. That's the basic narrative. That's the basic storyline. And the divine theme can really be called the biography of the soul, because it is our biography. It's our actual life story through the course of our millions of lifetimes. What we imagine to be our autobiography is just the autobiography of this blip of this present lifetime. But in fact, we live millions of lifetimes. So it's our story. As far as I can ascertain, Avatar Meher Baba is the first person ever to have explained this. I haven't found this clearly mapped out by any previous master. Does anyone know otherwise? I don't see it in Hinduism or Vedanta.
Did Aurobindo do a little bit?
Yes, I mean, there are some evolutionary motifs, but not like the individual soul progressing through evolution, gathering some consciousness out of the whim, God's whim to know himself. Who am I? Having achieved full consciousness in human form, it has to get rid of impressions and realize God. I haven't seen anything like that. Now, I've heard that some of Upasani Maharaj's discourses have something like that. I haven't seen it. I mean, you'll see hints. Like Neoplatonism would have, I come from God and I return to God. Okay, good. I mean, that's pretty vague.
Yeah, and that's Rumi's poem, which is pretty brief.
Right, and I bet you, apart from Baba lovers, there's practically no Islamist who would accept that he's actually talking about reincarnation. That's just a metaphor. But okay, I can well believe that Rumi did mean that. But it's pretty sketchy, let's say, to say the least. But it's a hint. There are hints here and there. But Baba really developed it fully. Again, the first time, as far as I know, this has ever been given. It's a tremendous contribution to the human understanding. It's a breathtaking leap, you might say. In this age where all the religions and intellectual traditions and cultures are meeting, clashing, Baba gave this. And it was the main concept, the main philosophical concept that Baba gave was this. I'm giving the whole thing at the center of the divine theme later this year. So this is his subject, this storyline, which Francis is going to tell in poetic terms. And he goes through it 4 times plus 1. And each pass through the divine theme occupies 10 stanzas. And each stanza has 10 lines. So this is the new number. Again, I'm struck by the fact that the penultimate chapter in God Speaks is entitled The 10 States of God. And a 10-line stanza is much more substantial. It's a substantial chunk, really. You can say quite a bit in that. And I very much, when you get the rhythm of Book 3, I'm really, really conscious when he passes from the 5th to the 6th stanza. There's this kind of a hinge, there's a kind of a rhythm. Because the divine theme has this rhythm of a descent to human form. The human form is bottom. We bottom out here. Baba's diagrams can usually, almost always, show the human form as the bottom, the point of maximum distance from God. And then the reascent into evolution. So there is that feeling of a movement and a turn and a rhythm to it all. And so it's 4 passes plus 1. He retells the whole divine theme story in 1 stanza in his coda. I'm calling it a coda. He uses the term coda in Book 5. By the way, in Book 2, I take it to be a coda where he says, cease, cease, swallow thy breath every moment. A very short little 2-line coda. Every book, all 5 books have a coda as part of the form. So now the genre, to me, is a musical one. Theme and variation, where he retells the story 4 times. And each time is quite different from all of the others. So now give a little more feeling for what this genre is. This musical genre, taken from music. Francis never said it was theme and variation that I know of, but it seems to me to be obvious. And here's a piece by Mozart. We'll play about 5 minutes worth of it. It's 12 minutes long. He wrote it when he was just a baby, I suppose. It was opus number 12. But as a baby, he came in with quite a lot. And the, what's the French title? Something, Dieu de je Mama, something Dieu de je Mama. Anyways, to us it's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. That's the melody. And you'll hear how Mozart repeats it, and sometimes he'll repeat the melody line and change the rhythm, or sometimes the melody line will disappear and you'll have the basic harmonic structure. You can see once again, what a brilliant guy he was. So this is to give a feeling for theme and variation. Okay? About 5 minutes or so. That's the second. Now the melody is back. Number 3. Now the melody is gone. Now the 6th. This one has a lot of bass stuff. Hear all the chromatic stuff he's doing. The melody is gone. Now it's back. Okay, that's probably enough to give a... So you get the idea of how that form works. You get to see Mozart's brilliance in coming with all these different variations on it. So here's Francis's use of this form. Okay. Any questions or comments at this point? This is just the introduction of the form and genre and those sorts of things, historical context. Now, the first of these passes is in some ways the most straight, although it's very highly poetical also. But it's pretty balanced between the different parts of the divine theme. The later ones will really focus on certain things more than others. But this one gives us more on the beyond state than any subsequent pass does. It gives a whole stanza. And there are certain verbal kinds of cues that repeat each time as markers. One is this is the only time that it's always once God slept. Every other pass will begin with just those words, once God slept. Another key marker is right in the middle. He says, let's see where it is here. Okay. As man, this is what at the beginning of reincarnation he says this. As man, he loved his loves and suffered his loves. When you reach human form, you're starting to have what you could actually call love, although it's human love. So it's kind of like desire love, you might say. That's a marker there. And when the involution starts, he'll use the phrase, and takes his stand in the waters. Now there's a kind of, you'll see it in this first pass through, he's quite explicit about it, but there's a kind of a implied topography, an implied scenery that looms in the background through a lot of it. And it's like this. If you can imagine, this is in human form. Once you reach the human form, you're in an ocean. But it's not the infinite divine ocean of love. It's the sea of samsara. You know the word samsara, the Buddhist word of birth and death and rebirth. And gradually you struggle up out of that ocean and have to pass through mountain passes. There's a severe pass to go through. When you get through, you find yourself on a wide plain. He calls this Troy land or Kurukshetra. Troy land would be the fields of Troy where the entire Iliad happens. And Kurukshetra, you know the Kurukshetra, it's the battlefield in the Gita, the Mahabharata. All the battle occurs there. So what he's talking about here is the place where the real spiritual struggle occurs. And then beyond that, the imagery for the ascent to God is various. The first time it's a 7 citadel tower that you progress through. So the beginning, he always starts with once God slept. So someone want to read out that first stanza just to put it in the air?
Once God, that great being, whose nature is existence, knowledge, and bliss, slept. He was like a man in deep sleep, who is, but does not know that he is. He had no knowledge of his knowledge, nor experience of his bliss. He was like a still, shoreless ocean, which no wind or wave moved upon. There was nothing but him. There were no stars, nor sun, nor earth, nor anything. All things were within him. But since he slept, they were also asleep, unformed and unmanifest.
That's a beautiful description of that state. This is right out of God Speaks. You want to keep going a little bit to the wind.
All knowledge of himself and of all things were in him, but he did not know that he knew. Then there surged within him the desire, whim, to know who he was. And he spoke within himself the first speech, "Who am I?" And with the utterance of this first speech, all things in their potentiality came forth from him. But all things are nothing, and so the universe of stars and suns is nothing. Nothing is included in his everything, but is nothing in itself. But at this time, since he did not know his knowledge, he did not know that nothing was nothing at all.
So now we're getting the everything and the nothing theme we had in the last book, but how different it is when it's coming out in this God Speaks context. This whole thing is the beginning of chapter 8 of God Speaks, is where Baba really develops on the everything and the nothing. Okay, this is the fullest description of the beginning of the divine theme that we're going to get in this book. Now to jump to the section on where he gets into reincarnation, and now he describes this. He gives 2 stanzas to it. And he's going to do it in terms of his sun-moon theme. Remember the sun-moon theme from earlier? Actually, we had a Friday morning session on Jalali Jamali. Some of you were there. It's the same thing. He doesn't use the term Jamali Jalali, but it seems clear to me that that's what he means. And he brought up, I won't take the time to get the passage, but when he, in book 1, when he was talking about Baba as the perfect one, he talks about the perfect balance of the sun and moon aspects of his nature. What is the sun and what is the moon in Baba? Remember that? What is his sun side?
Jalali.
Jalali, and what is that?
That's the fiery.
Yeah,
It's the one that burns you up.
yeah. So if you're in the Manzali mead and he was in a Jalali mood, what might he do to you?
Throw you down the stairs.
Throw me down the stairs. And if he was in a Jamali mood, he would rush down the stairs and embrace you. Oh, were you hurt, my darling? Right? The moon, that's the moon aspect. Where yin yang works well with this too, it seems to me. Lion and lamb, he brings those up as themes. Remember that? Where he starts going into Christianity and has turned Jesus into a wimpy sheep. Forgotten his lion side. Big theme in Stay With God. Okay? He's bringing it up again, and here we're going to get a really major transformation of this theme, where it's the same theme, but it acquires a new application. And to anticipate, the moon aspect in human form, the reincarnation, we've seen it's the perfection of the 2 aspects, is what Baba embodies. The moon creates the romance and sustains the delusion. And the sun is that which destroys the illusion. So one of Francis's big themes is in human form, you have to take the sun path. You have to forsake the illusion and pass through death, pass through the fana, pass through destruction. You'll see that really clearly in book 4. He starts right out that way, right at the beginning. Take the following the moon path is the path to rebirth. Following the sun path is the path to death and birth in him. That theme. So he's going to describe reincarnation now in those terms. So he's going to give a stanza to the moon and a stanza to the sun aspects of the reincarnationary experience. But here's another twist to it. The whole moon side, which is this stanza, is actually a delusion, and its real nature is exposed in the next stanza. But the delusion is actually an anticipation of the real romance that is going to arise at the end of the journey. That he also keeps bringing out. So that's another twist to this, right? The moon is beauty. It's that which elicits inspiration and longing and quest and searching. So, okay, we have a reader for, I guess just down to the bottom here. We have to shift pages to go over to the Earthshaker Poseidon. That's who it is. We won't know
from As Man.
Yeah.
He loved his loves and suffered his loves. Sunbeat and rain hail dew of love. Whirlpool and dark wave and threatening rocks. Warm swirl of the surf's backrush around the ankles, and fine sand suspended like whirls in the water.
Let's just stop there for a second. You get the scene, right? I mean, you're down in Noosa on the beach, you know, and it's sort of sunbeat at first, but then it turns into night imagistically as it progresses. And I imagine most of you have been in the ocean, sort of like I don't know, there's some rocks and the waves are surging up and surging back. And sometimes you see the sand, and I can imagine a little universe as each grain of sand, right? And we've done all of that in the evolutionary journey. We've done every little bit of that. And okay, there's a whirlpool, and there's a dark wave, and there's threatening rocks. Okay, but in this stanza, there's a romance to it, isn't there? At least I find it to be so. It's kind of an allure. You're down by the ocean. There's this threat there, and it's kind of like you go to an amusement park and there's the roller coaster. Oh, isn't that fun? There's the whirlpool, there's the dark wave. It's attractive and it's alluring and it's romantic and it's part of the charm of the scene. We're going to find out what those things actually are in the next stanza, and they're no fun at all. But he uses dark wave as a symbol throughout the entire poem for this. Okay, suspended like worlds in the water.
Salt on eyes and mouth. Taste of salt on her mouth.
Whoa! Where did she come from? Right? Her mouth? What do you suppose they're doing? They're kissing, right? So now you've got a scene. In fact, and the moon come up huge and yellow. You're down by the beach and this passionate, romantic kiss, the moon rising and Earthshaker Poseidon.
Begin the beginning.
Begin the beginning, yeah. I've never seen it, but people told me there was some movie in the 50s. From Here to Eternity, is that it? Or there's some movie with kissing on the beach like that.
Yes, Burt Lancaster.
Yeah, okay. That kind of a scenery, you know. Moon huge and yellow, and suddenly there's a she there, for heaven's sakes. Taste of salt in her mouth. You know, it's really brilliant imagery using here. Keep going.
Warm honey of kisses. Warm honey with slight salt.
I mean, that's really brilliant description of this kind of thing, isn't it? I mean, it may be a while for some of us. I have to go back to my teen years.
And the pounding of Earthshaker beside me.
Yeah.
A dream sleep, and the breeze and the dawn stirring a wisp of her lovely hair.
Isn't that beautiful? Wisp of her lovely hair. The moon there. Who is Poseidon?
The god of the ocean.
The Greek god of the ocean. This is a heavily, there's a big Greek population in the state of God. The gods and heroes are definitely, they've got good quarters, sleeping quarters for them in the state of God. And he'll use later Poseidon and Poseidon's horses on the blue paddock of the ocean. He uses this imagery a lot. So if you've read the Odyssey, Poseidon is an awesome figure, great power. And also in the Odyssey, he's an enemy of Odysseus, it so happens. And Odysseus' men pissed him off in one of the early episodes. So he's quite threatening. So you can hear the ocean is roaring in the background. Poseidon's horses are there, and taste of honey in her mouth, and the moon huge and yellow. So this is all pretty nice, you know.
And she was still there in the dawn.
Yeah, that's right. But now what's happened? She ain't so great in the morning anymore, right? Want to keep going?
And the night of moon ended, and the honey eaten of her mouth.
It's not there anymore, right? The kisses aren't so good anymore. There was sweetness before, but it's not anymore. Isn't this human love? This is human love. It's always like this. Not just sexual love, but every aspect of human love. It has all these great promises, but when the sun comes up, it's gone.
And the stars of her eyes fled back into the worlds fled back into the worlds where the sky and the sun
Is this
come up
right?
again. There's a typo there.
Is there a typo here?
Fled back into the world.
Wells where
where
us.
the sky and the sun come up again. The clear sky of another day.
Okay, so now we're going to get the sun aspect. Now we're going to see what the cruel reality was behind the dark wave and all these other romantic things that happened before.
And the setting out on wash of dark wave along hammered streets lined with open mouths and protruding tongues of Kali.
Who's Kali?
God of destruction.
Huh?
The God of destruction.
Yeah. I have an image of her.
She was
Yeah.
they.
So protruding tongues, you see, this is how she's depicted. So, this is her husband, Shiva, she's trampling on. And these are a garland of skulls, right? What do you think about a nice long smooch? It was pretty good in the last stanza. What do you think about it now, huh? Where she, the taste of honey in her, now would be the taste of blood if she cuts your throat. Right?
Oppenheimer, the creator of the bomb, when they first tested it and it was successful,
Yeah.
he said something, he quoted something of the Gita.
Yeah.
Now Kali has been unleashed or something to that extent.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Destroyer of worlds.
So this is
Well, like a
Shiva.
haka too.
Huh?
It's also like a haka.
A haka?
New Zealand.
Ah.
And
Yeah.
now
That's what's it.
Yeah. So you see, the archetype of the feminine in the last stanza was beautiful. Moon, kisses, a romantic ocean. And now we're seeing the opposite side of it. So he's using this stark contrast here, showing sun and moon, what appears one way and what it looks like when the sun comes up on it.
With open mouths and protruding tongues of Kali, licking victims and votaries with blast furnaces, goose-stepping them to the rhythm of typewriters.
What is this licking victims and votaries? She said. But where is she licking them into?
The blast furnace.
What's a blast furnace?
Oh, it's
Like
steel.
Does this evoke any historical
Yes.
episode, any of you? The Nazis and the Jews, 10 years before.
But that wasn't a blast furnace.
No.
That wasn't a blast furnace.
Oh, they burnt
No,
them
just
after
gas
they
tank.
Yeah,
gassed
I know,
them.
but a blast furnace is very specific for making
But we
steel.
have goose
And
stepping like
it's
that.
hard-
Yeah, goose
But it
stepping,
definitely sounds Nazi.
Yeah.
But the blast furnaces, it's that transformative fire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually going to happen.
But there's also,
But at the moment, it sounded pretty bad.
that's also the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
The metal,
It's big fist and
Francis brings that theme up a number of times.
Yeah.
The metal, the steel.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you, Lorraine. I think it's more to do with, the imagery sounds more to do with Industrial Revolution to me.
Yeah, when we have the goose stepping, it's hard to miss the
He can bring
Nazis.
two things in.
But all these things can be
You
there.
can allude to several. The thing of a great poet is they can allude to more than one thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's highly evocative poetic imagery. I think we can say that. And licking is clearly the Kali thing, right? You saw those pictures, and she's always shown that way. And look, she's licking victims. What's a votary?
Those who worship.
A devotee. she's not just licking her victims into the blast furnaces, she's licking her goddamn followers. Everybody, right?
The blast furnace is also about transformation.
Yeah.
It forms this base thing into steel. So it's a few images going, which is
Well, this isn't the end of the story. And we're going to have transformation coming into it. What the heck do typewriter keys have to do with all of it?
The Nazis kept records of everything.
Yeah, they would keep records and, you know, this horrible stuff going on, and you've got these secretaries, and kind of, it's not just talking about a Nazi scene, obviously. It's the whole, this sort of bureaucracy or heartless,
And a mechanistic universe.
mechanistic universe with the underlying horrific dimension to it, right? So look at what all that moonlight and the dark swirl turned into when the sun came up. This is human love. It keeps going back and forth from one to the other, right? This is quite a magnificent poetic representation of reincarnation in that way, with the promise that always fails you as long as you're in this reincarnationary cycle. He has that great line in Cantos of Wandering, the merry-go-round is not so merry when you start to realize that it keeps going round. That's the thing. So he has shown us this in these poetic terms. And you see what he's done with the sun and moon now. This is quite a transformation of a core theme of Stay with God, actually. And now the moon is that which sustains delusions. We're at the stage of delusions. Reincarnation is delusion. The romance, it has the element of romance, it has the element of beauty, but the effect of it is to sustain the delusion. And the sun is the cruel bearing of what underlies the delusion. So now sun and moon have a new dimension to them from what they had before.
Lord, it's like it's turning it into numbers.
Yeah. Especially the typewriter keys.
Yeah.
And one thing I was thinking of when that last line, and the breeze and the dawn stirring the wisp of her lovely hair, and then boom, you go right. So that happens dawn and dusk.
Yeah.
At sea, it's very different than it is on land. Whereas in land, it's expanded and elongated. Whereas at sea, you have the dawn, and it's so fast and so quick, and then all of a sudden the sun is up and blasts everything.
Yeah.
So it's out on the ocean. It's more of a.
You know, it's interesting. The previous verse is very much ocean imagery dominated, whereas this is a city licking, goose stepping, hammered streets. What is this hammered streets about, do you think? Why are they hammered?
But the other thing is, if you're in a sea of samsara,
Yes. It's
then
not the
all of
real
this is within that. It's not that it's separate on some land, it's that this
It's
is within the
contained,
sea of
yeah.
samsara.
You haven't come out of it yet. He'll use a number of images later on about taking your stand within the waters. And these are the waters. This surge back and forth between opposites like this. I think these two stanzas are really quite brilliant in their showing the dilemma of reincarnation.
I don't know, what do you think hammered streets are?
Huh?
What do you think hammered streets are?
I think it's
How
when
do you
the
make
activity
picture?
of people and
I'm not totally
things
sure.
on them.
Huh?
It's the activity of
March.
Goose stepping, march.
Yeah.
That's one.
It can be.
Jackhammering.
Jackhammering,
Yeah,
yeah.
chicken.
Yeah. So that's one application. I don't know, it's just a very,
Streets have to be, roads have to be,
Haven't
Big.
created.
almost
in
looks
order
like
to
cobblestones in a
turn
European city. It
Yeah,
brings that,
Roman roads made up of
Yeah.
different
you have to hammer them into place.
And so where he says setting out on wash of dark wave, is that like the dark wave receding, or coming out of the wash of the dark wave onto the hammered streets?
Yes, you know what, the dark wave, he'll use that image a lot. And he had it in the previous stanza, that the dark wave was there. I take this to mean this is showing what the dark wave manifests as. This is the dark wave. In the previous stanza, it was kind of cool. It was kind of exciting because Poseidon was probably thundering over his horses, and there was the moon, and there was the warm honey of kisses. But when you see it exposed, it's not nice at all. It's hideous.
Is it depression?
Yeah. Yeah, so this alternation. This is the human condition. This is it. And you know, you see so many modern writers despairing. Well, that's because they only got to the end of stanza 5. They should have kept going. This is where most people are trapped, is in this. But the story doesn't end here. So now the big turn is, you notice 10 stanzas. You see there's quite a big turn here, right? And now we have this line again. We had it actually 2 stanzas before. His loves loved, enjoyed, and suffered, stored and remembered. This is human love, right? All of this is love of a sort, you know, but it's human love. Sifted and sorted and evaluated through his many lives. And then this is the key line in each pass, is this one. Till he takes his stand in the flood mightily. It's in the flood. Like Lorraine, you were saying all this hammered streets and goose stepping is in the ocean. It is. Why would it be in a flood? Because you're swept by these currents. Some of you tried to go out in the ocean sometimes, standing in the waves as they go past you. Maybe you haven't. But you know what it's like to get hit by a wave, and you're trying to take your stand and you just get knocked off your feet. This is that heroic accomplishment of taking your stand finally. Every pass has this line, has this thought in it. And suffers the flood and turns the weight of its waters. You know, you actually have to, the wave is coming and you turn the weight and use it for your own purposes. The heroic theme. And now we get what I was talking about before, the movement from up into the plains. To break through the paths of the circling mountains. You get the imagery? You come up out of the ocean, you turn the force of its waters onto the plains of Troyland, or Kurukshetra, the Battle of Kurukshetra. So getting out of it doesn't mean you're on Easy Street. He doesn't mention Easy Street in his list here. By the way, there is a Baba lover in Mariposa who lives literally on Easy Street. I have to find out how she did it. But not this way, apparently. And now we're getting really Homeric imagery, against the massed shields and spears and nodding forests of plumes. What are these forests of plumes? Helmets. Yeah, they would have this.
Horses have.
Oh, horses, yeah. You've seen the imagery, some of you, of the Iliad, what their helmets were like. And he likes rifles, and sudden rifles, and hurled destruction, and carried death, charging himself with impetuous valor, in unheard of feats of courage and endurance. Here we're back to the heroic, right? Which Francis clearly interprets as the spiritual path. That's what it's really about. Okay, I've been reading. Someone else want to read?
No longer can he be counted a man, but is a hero unthinkably great and unimaginable, in feats with the weapons of pent waters in his hands.
What is this about? The weapons of pent waters in his hands, and the roar of waters in his soul.
So the things that have been knocking him off his feet, now he has control over them.
He's mastered them, and they're part of his force. When he strikes a blow, he's got the mastery of that ocean that used to sweep him back and forth. You know, he was kissing him with the water sweeping back and forth, but he was subject to it then. Now he's a master. He uses, by the way, this imagery throughout this book of the waters and also the fire. There's going to be a lot of fire. Actually, water, fire, and earth. Yeah.
Well, there's another, Francis takes this up again when he does Hymn to God the Man in The Word at World's End.
Yeah.
Because he said that eventually you turned and took your stand in the puzzle and sieve of yourself and became your own hero with a capital H.
Yeah.
And fought your way out of the tangle of flesh and the drift of stars. So he's taken that whole thing and put it into that as well.
I see. I had completely forgotten those lines.
With the weapons of pent waters in his hands and the roar of waters in his soul. But also great is the enemy.
Now look, we've got an enemy. This is really the heroic thing. He doesn't really explain who the enemy is here. But if you've read the Iliad and the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, there are enemies plenty. But who do you suppose it would really be in the greater war? Maya.
His own self.
Your own self, your own false self is the real enemy. But it presents it to you. I've got a great enemy, Ravana, to fight. I've got Hector to fight. You know, that's how it's experienced.
If he falls, he dies a hero's death, and the battle maidens bear him to a hero's reward. But if he sustains the war and bears on gloriously, and God and his guru guard him, and pour into his soul divine grace, and into his limbs unmatchable strength, he wins to the first circle of the seven-circled citadel of God.
What is this?
The first plane.
First plane. Yeah, that's right. So now he's, the imagery now is he's been fighting on a plane, but he's conquering a fort, with 7 walls. That's the imagery. So he says there's a whole implied visual scene in this whole book. Going up. Get through the first wall.
Here he rests and enjoys the perfumes of paradise until the Master, watchful and benign, urges him gently on. And he mounts to the second shining circle and enjoys heavenly music. And again the Master urges on, and he arrives at the third circle of infinite light. Now, if the gentle Murshid urges on again,
Get a Murshid, a Sufi term there.
halfway across the wide plain of that plain lies enchantment.
Do you know what this is, by the way? Between the third and the fourth, there's a hayrat. It's called a state of enchantment. And it's the worst enchantment on the whole spiritual path. And that's where Muhammad the Must was. We got stuck there when he was a young man. If you go into it, you'll be caught in a certain posture. If it's a deep enchantment, you can be in it for the rest of your life. You can just stay in that position physically until you die, actually. If it's a less deep enchantment, you move a little bit, and a master, sometimes it takes a master to get you out of it. I don't know how Francis got to know all this stuff. I mean, he didn't have very long to study the books.
Well, it was all prior to India, of course, wasn't it?
Huh?
It was all prior to India.
Yeah, he wasn't living in India, he was down here in Australia. Who would he go to? I guess he had to hit the books, you know. There's nowhere else.
But if he holds steadily to the Master's name and vision of his lovely face, he passes the danger and arrives at the fourth circle of this way.
So let's jump to the last stanza of this. So this is now begins the game. This is the 10th stanza. I don't know, are you feeling the rhythm of this? There's a kind of a feeling that happens as you go through the 10 stanzas. It happens every time. And this is the final one.
Now begins the game of love in earnest, to which the flight of nights on earth moon and thundering wave on white beach, and stars of eyes and honeyed mouth and delicate wisp of hair
Is this familiar, by the way?
in sudden breeze was apprenticeship. Apprenticeship to forgetfulness and service.
You see, so it actually wasn't lost, that earlier experience. It was the anticipation of the real thing, which is now.
This is the love, which only the verses of God Himself or His perfect saints can hint us towards. Deafness and sightlessness, and the wasted frame, and tears. God as a man worshipping God as God, and God as God loving Himself in a man. And so, till He hears the final veil.
Tears.
Tears, yes. Till He tears the final veil between Him and Himself and answers His question, who am I, with I am myself.
What a beautiful ending to this. This sounds to me like you ever called samadhi. Just to the third pass through, he goes beyond God realization to the perfect master who comes back from that. That theme comes in. But the first two passes it doesn't. It's just telling the story of the journey. I don't know, that at some point he captures a very moving kind of note in this. So there's the story of the divine theme told the first time. And this is kind of straight, it's highly poetical, using highly poetical imagery, but it's kind of balanced. He has every part of the story that he goes into. And the next three will be much more, he'll have particular emphases. We can probably do a little bit more. It's 20 after 4. So let's take a look at the second pass through. Any thoughts or comments on this? Lead at the first pass. Baba said that state of God gives life to God speaks, and I can really see it's so obvious in this section. What a beautiful and moving depiction of this whole journey of the soul. Now, the second time, Francis has a governing metaphor. Several of them, but there's one more than any other. And that is the building of houses, which he uses as a symbol for form, the assumption of form. Building new houses, inhabiting them. And then fire creates the big bricks that make them, and fire destroys them again. And he uses that metaphor throughout the early part, and he comes back to it in a really wonderful transformation at the very end of this whole thing.
So Paul, why do you think Francis retells this man's biography 5 times? Is it because it's worth the telling, do you think?
It's
Well,
not that, oh, sorry. It's
it's
not
a-
only in here.
Huh?
It's not only in here. Francis keeps coming back to this. In his
Yeah.
later poetry, it's hinted at in the ghazals. The
Yeah.
whole thing is done in Hymn to God the Man. It's
Yeah.
the entire journey.
Yeah.
Also, then to remember, this is the theme and variations,
Mhm.
and so it's a repeating,
The musical
a slight
form.
variation.
Like much chaos.
There's very much a music to it. That's what I'm really conscious. God Speaks has a kind of music, but this is pure music, actually. That's one thing.
How does it fit time-wise around World at World's End and all that? I should know this.
Way before this. was
Yes,
written.
What It Well Said was 74 published.
So this is
Much
way before that.
Yeah.
So when he wrote those, he had this under his belt.
Yeah.
I mean, this is,
This was written before Indian Americans.
In
yeah,
India, yeah.
I guess he was staying with Robert Rouse and
He
Laura,
wrote
is
this,
that her name? When he wrote this, probably in Sydney.
Mm.
And what building houses, why might Francis,
Well, it's a metaphor for the body mostly.
they have a body, yeah.
And then the net of the senses which projects the world.
Yeah.
That's the other forms.
Stone, and he uses brick as a word for stone, because he makes houses of brick, is his poetic symbol for contrariety, a word which he even mentions right here. In fact, it's experiencing contrariety. Right? Sorry, right here. Any of you seen that word before? God speaks. I could go to it, but I won't. But God speaks, page 9. Where Baba has just described the beyond state and the surging of the whim, and the soul acquires its first sanskara and has its first experience. And the experience is of contrariety. Again, I'm impressed that Francis was able to notice just one word on the page.
It's like contrast and variety joined together, isn't
It
it?
is. It's a great word. I've never seen it as Savataric and Baba's use of it. What would the contrariety be that the soul experiences as its first experience?
Well, is that part of the word contrary?
Yes, it's definitely
Contrary.
contrariness, you might say. Yeah.
Like,
So what is contrary about its experience? Is it just an accursed mood?
yeah.
A bit like
That could be.
the experience of paradox.
How so?
Well, it's experiencing self and other.
Yeah. The opposition.
In
I,
opposition,
you.
yeah. And it doesn't make sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
because if I alone exist, who the hell are you?
Yeah, that's right. And, okay, God is infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss. Is that what I experience as my first experience? Ooh. How much power have I got? Practically, how much, I mean, a stone, you know? How much can a stone do? How much can a stone think? How much can a stone know? Almost nothing. The experience of the soul is starkly at odds, contrary to what the soul is. That contrariety is what drives the entire journey of the soul. I am not this. The soul has the knowledge. Has the latent knowledge. I am not this. This is not good enough by God.
Something other.
Huh?
Something other am I.
Something other am I. Yeah. So Francis is going to, this is really a central theme to this pass. You see, he didn't describe it this way the first time. He's getting a bit metaphysical, actually, but he's got the metaphor of building houses to use to do this.
Well, he's got a ghazal too. It says, I began life as a stone, and that's when I learned how to wait. And without patience, I would never have arrived at the rose garden's gate.
Yeah, he's going to have a kind of a yogi stone in the second stanza here. It sits down in stone like that. The surge, the urge, the whim to know himself, and he asked himself, who am I? And he was objectified to himself. We were just talking about that, right? He's now an object. Subject-object is there as opposite to him. Experiencing contrariety and so disrupting his indivisible poise and eternal tranquility, and causing in him experience of impression which was gross, solid, himself as separate from him, finite as opposite to infinite. Okay, he's really explaining contrariety and what the stone thing is. He became conscious by impression. By the way, you haven't read it. I didn't take the time. But there's a message from Baba that prefaces one of the messages Baba gave for State of God. It's about the original word. And he said, division by impression. I'm sure that maybe Francis had written this and stuck that in, or I don't know, but it seems clearly to refer to Baba's message there. If you take a moment later, you can take a look and see that. Not of himself is eternal, infinite self, but of finiteness, etc. Seed of contrariety sown by the reverberation of the first urge. And now we're going to get about 3 stanzas on evolution and building houses. He built for himself a house of stone. And this is kind of a neat image, I find. Not of stone walls, but solid stone, right? It's not around him, he is it, and sat down in it. It gives me a picture of like this kind of sitting there. I am a stone. I am a stone, you know. And because of the closeness of stone thought, though without active thinking, there isn't anything like our thinking going on. He was stone. He, the eternally free and only existent one, thought he was stone. But after ages and cycles of this imprisonment, now we're going to get fire. This heat is going to turn into fire in another stanza or so. The heat of his desire for self-knowing melted the stone, and he was freed from imprisonment in stone, but retained the impressions of stoneness, etc. In the next house, this house was of iron. Okay, and he sits in iron sitting for ages and cycles, though not so long, since iron melts quicker than stone. That's literally true, right? You know, at a certain heat it does melt. He dissolves it away. His next house of thick vegetation and mosses and grass, entwining creepers and trees, etc. But these, though green with sap, burned quickly. So you see, he's using this image of fire as the driving force that keeps destroying the forms. Later, he'll make it clear that fire bakes the bricks. We're going to have to finish. I want to get to the last stanza where you look at what he does with this. Okay, we have here, loving his loves and suffering his loves. Remember that? That comes up again. This is reincarnation. Breaking down death, building up again birth. Innumerable houses for his requirement of innumerable experience. Now we're going to get reincarnation with priests and being born to a mother, and all that kind of thing. But now look at this. Remember this? But as earth nights of moon and stars of eyes, cool breeze over the still warm sands, curling a wisp of hair across her brow, which nourished his vision. That keeps coming back. That beauty, that anticipation of the real love, and the roar of the surf of Earthshaker Poseidon, pointing his pulse of life force, to more than himself. You see, that gives a direction of that life force to something greater. This is as you start the spiritual path now. To distance was apprenticeship to forgetfulness. He had that word before, apprenticeship. To forgetfulness and service, by which he would become, oh, in what ages and cycles to come, a lover of God. What a great thing it is to become a lover of God. What a vastness of time and journeying it takes. He gives you that feeling here. And in the next, I'm going to do some other... Yeah, okay. Going and coming, demolishing with fire one house, and building another with bricks of impressions baked in the fire. Now we get the key moment. Till he takes his stand in the flood and turns the waters to control the fire. Right? Until now, the fire of death has been destroying form after form after form. And you haven't been controlling it because nobody wants to die. The fire burns your form. Now, taking the force of water and controlling the fire. See, fire, and this is a great image. Or grasps fire in two hands wet with weeping. Isn't that beautiful? All the suffering you've gone through, your hands are wet, and you take the fire and control it in your own two hands. And worshiping its glowing countenance moves it to burn the rubbish in the house, etc. This is really splendid poetry that we're getting here. But to jump to the end, here's the last stanza, and we'll close. Next time we'll resume with the last two passages of this. Look at where he gets to in the end of the journey. Look at what he does to the house metaphor. Actually, I want to look at this. He says, okay, he walks around the house. Oh, this is my house. A little bit of this here, a little bit of that there. He's had his stance on this. Thinking, a shrub here, some so-and-so flowers there. I, the householder. Okay, you've been doing this. This is human form. But now, turning back into the room, considering his face. A few gray hairs, figure, a bit too much in the mirror. Isn't that what we're like? Always sort of self-beholding. Fix this. I'm getting a little bit fat. What are people going to say? All that kind of thing. You get sick of that and turns on himself coldly or savagely and deliberately opens the door and leaves it to whomso, to loot and enjoy. You say, to hell with this house business of mine. I'm done with it. The Tukarams, the Ramakrishnas, the Maharajas. You let the world take it and destroy it. And now look at what his house becomes. But whatever. And comes at last the ripening through loves and unloves, swift joys and slow pain, sure grasp and shaking hand, these are the opposites. Ripen to indifference and alertness. And he takes his stand in the current. Comings, it's always water imagery for taking your stand. Comings and goings. And the next time he comes with transparent residual impressions for the building material and builds himself his next last house. This is God speaks lingo, right? The next most and the next last. I'm sure you must remember that, those who have suffered your way through the second chapter of God Speaks. Next to last house, through which from outside light shines. What does this house look like? What's the image you're getting? Translucent, crystal. And most houses, they're solid walls and everything, but now you can see through them. You look at the eyes. I was just looking at the biography you gave me of Nai Khan. Look at the eyes of someone like that, and it's like the light is shining out. There are no walls anymore. That's the kind of house you got now. And he loses himself. Now look at what he goes through in the heaven and hell state experience. And he loses himself in dreaming light, and goes in light, and weighs light. This is between lifetimes, I guess, when you're on the 5th or 6th plane. And returns with materials of light, and builds a house of light, and meditates light, becomes light, and never returns. And that's just glorious. Look what became of the house. The house became pure light. Okay. So next time we'll resume with the last part of all this. You can see this is a completely different kind of path that he's given us in the first one, governed by this house metaphor. Theme and variation, giving a completely different flavor and feel.
And see why God says that state of God gives life to prospects.
It sure does. It sure does. Well, Jai Baba.